I did want to ask, just right off the bat, kind of what are your goals for this? Like, what do you hope to kind of share? Or like,
Um, I'd say the only thing that I wish to share is a honest representation of what it is like to live with a sensory processing issue. And all I wish to be the end goal of this interview is to have some understanding from whoever may be watching this, whether it be just a peek into what it's like to have this kind of condition.
mhm,
Perhaps there is friends or family or someone they know that has been demonstrating some sensory issues.
yeah.
And I just wish that they would just stop on by, give a listen, and maybe learn something. That's all.
Yes. Yeah. Well, why don't we start with just telling your story? Where do you feel like it would start for you?
All right. I've also got the questions on my phone.
Okay, good.
So just to bring that up to make sure. All right. So it's what was SPD like for you as a kid? Well, my story started around the time I was a child. And I remember from when I was born. They say I couldn't possibly remember it, but I remember being in an incubator.
Really?
And I remember all those sights and sounds around me. And it was before I even could conceptualize what was even going on. And I remember there just being a lot of noise and a lot of bright light. And I guess at the time it was overwhelming. I remember crying a lot. And I'm sure that babies cry. So there wasn't really anything that stood out. But when I got older, I remember being in kindergarten, approximately 6 years old. And it was only being in that kind of environment in that room for such an extended period of time that I noticed that the lights would bother me. And the only reprieve that I would have from these fluorescent lights was during nap time.
Mm,
And because they would turn them off and it would be dark.
mhm.
And I remember I was always very avoidant of bright lights. And I would try to hide myself away all the time. If I was like a cat, I would burrow in places. If I was um, at the doctor's office with my father, I wouldn't sit on the chair. I would lay underneath of it or in a corner or under a table. And it was because I think it wasn't just what I would say chalked up to being a kid. I was adventurous, but my reasons were different. I wanted to get away, and
Yeah.
I wanted to shield myself from the world and all of its noises and input. And the only time, other than those issues, I was I would go shopping with my mom, and I would never be able to find out or find a pair of pants or shirt or a hat that I liked. And I hated being in there too because the lights aggravated me, the sounds aggravated me. And it made me into a bit of a curmudgeon as a child. You know what I mean? Because, like, not only do I have to try on all these clothes that I hate doing anyway, I hate the process of trying on one outfit, even when I choose it, and I'd be in absolute turmoil trying all these multitudes of outfits that I didn't even pick out. My mom did,
Mhm.
and then the lights will be going on. It was literally, um, I'm trying to be soft about it, but it was torture. There
Mm,
it is. It was torture for me because I couldn't understand. Because I could see my mom trying on clothes without difficulty. She never complained about being at the mall. In fact, she preferred it because she loved to go shopping. And I didn't think what was wrong with me, but I just thought that other people held it in. And that was my rationale for it as a child.
Mm,
And I thought everybody felt the same way I did. And it didn't ever occur to me to, I was always picky, but I didn't do anything about it till I had it to wear a wool uniform when I was in JROTC. And I stuck it out, man. Believe me. I was the only kid in my first year of high school to never miss a uniform day, even though it bothered me. I know my hands would turn visibly red. I would start sweating
mm,
because it bothered me that bad. But I didn't want whatever it was. I didn't have a concept of what it was till I got a diagnosis from you.
mhm.
And it was tough. That's what long haul, but that's what it was like for me as a child. And maybe we could delve back into it um, in the later questions. But I just remember very confusing, no affirmation for how I felt, and just a little scared how I would function or get through the day.
Mm, mhm. So your it's like your strategy was to just endure it, and um it sounds like you are pretty tough and being able to endure and to, you know, especially the word that you use, torture. That's a big word. And so I think probably what's so hard is maybe that like you were saying, for everybody else, it you know, they can put on clothes, they can, you know, change clothes, they can, you know, the lights don't bother them. um so it's hard to perceive that it could feel so torturous, which I think that's the struggle we have in helping people understand what it could be like. Because on the surface of things, everything is fine. Everything
Yeah,
should be fine. But it's not. And
yeah,
so yeah, so that was, you know, one of my questions. I'm not sure if this was one I gave to you because I just always come up with more all the time because
all the better, all the
I
better.
could talk to you forever about any and all things because you're so you are just interested in everything. You're such a interesting guy, you know. You're entertaining, you're compassionate, you're just all kinds of wonderful. So I could have all kinds of questions
Thank you,
and
Elise.
we could just
I
probably
try my
talk all
best.
day.
Yeah.
But that was one of my questions. Like, at what point did you realize, was it one thing or was it an accumulation of things? Did things just start coming together that, well, maybe other people don't feel this way? And, um, you know, and maybe it was there something that helped you distinguish your responses as different than other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say when you start to have misunderstandings, and if you're a aware person and you've got some sense of self-awareness and you can read the room, you start to realize that your requests aren't always accommodated.
Mm,
When you say, I don't, let's not turn on that light. I don't want to wear that jacket. I don't want to wear those socks. And you start to get a lot of why or why not. And I realized it because my reasonings weren't ever sufficient when I would tell people or tell my mom or tell my dad, or I'd be at school and I would get in trouble for disobedience when I'm a good listener. I like to play by the rules. sometimes. But you know what I mean? I don't want to cause any trouble. But when I'm made to choose between something that is abhorrently just uncomfortable for me, it's going to be a very strong, strong no. And I realized no matter how much I explained myself, it was never understood.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to, I'd say, I wasn't bullied by students, but I was bullied by teachers.
Oh.
And however candid I was, I would say, I was sensitive to noise, to light. I hated friction sounds, absolutely. And I understand when I tell someone it, I'm sure I could imagine, from my perspective, it's like someone saying, I hate the sound of clinking glass. And that is a thing for some people too, because there's a certain audio frequency that people just hate. And people are different, and there's a word that's being thrown around, triggered by different things. So I understand if someone tells me something, but I just realized when the world wasn't being receptive to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the only one, as far as I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And if I asked to leave the class, because I remember I told my teacher, one of them, that I was sensitive to certain sounds, like the papers and all that, only when they were really rustled. And I understand. I totally understand why someone might think that's crazy. You know, I get it. I'm not going to flip a table. I thought I would have a few times, but I never did. But I remember telling my teacher, and he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing." And some curious kids inquired and said, "What Jesse say?" And my teacher said, "Oh, he doesn't like this sound," and he proceeded to make it. And I was like, "Don't you do that?" And
Oh.
I can't. I'm not someone who gets really angry. I'm just very straight at it. And if I can't, I'll just remove myself from the situation if I can't tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a nightmare from some kids movie where it's like, ha ha, you forgot to put on pants and you made it all the way to school without noticing it until us. Well, until we're able to tell you, your entire peer group that dictates your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he somehow got the whole class to chime in and do it. And all I remember was saying, I'm going to walk out of this room. And he said, if you do, you're going to get a referral. And I just said, fair enough. And I just left the classroom.
Yeah.
And nothing, he was a nice guy. But that's the thing about people is that some people have a hard time conceptualizing things outside of their own experience. And that's what was so hard for me is that all throughout high school, I was like that. And no one understood, and I would get in trouble for something that I didn't have control over, and I really felt my hand was forced. But at the same time, I had to realize that to compromise would eat away at my soul, and it's not some ideological belief. It's just the way that I interpret the world, my body. My mind doesn't want to. I don't want to be like this, but it's always a fight or flight response. And being high school was torture, and high school was, and I'd say during the onset of puberty it actually got worse,
Mm.
and that's when I realized I'm different from everybody else. Maybe some people hide it better statistically. There's some other people that felt like me. I'm outspoken though, so
Well, you're so articulate and you're so understanding and you have awareness of yourself, and that's probably why, you know, why it would eat away at you knowing that it's not a choice that you are making. It is what it is, and you're doing everything to, not just um not just survive, but you want everybody else to understand too, and understand, you know like you said, you're not trying to get away with something, or you're not trying to, um, be a behavior problem. It just is, there's a level of, we all, you know, need to feel safe and feel protected. And when we don't feel safe in our own bodies, that that's really tough.
It is, to touch on that, like we all want to feel safe, we all want to feel protected. But when you're a child and you're going through this, your point of reality starts with your parents because they affirm how you feel. And if they say no, you don't feel that way, you feel invalidated.
Right.
And I'm sure that could manifest itself into innumerable things. Because if you're told your feelings aren't true, you don't trust yourself. And I think in a way, it's its own invertent form of gaslighting.
Right. Right. And then, so what are you waiting for? You're waiting for somebody to tell you how you feel or how you should feel. And so then, I mean, it would be really easy to be taken advantage of. Um, and that's not a very good thing. um,
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure in which ways I was taken advantage of. I mean, everybody has to a certain degree, and where maybe I'm going to rephrase that. I'll say that if you're used to feeling a certain way, you try to at least express yourself in a way that people understand. So I definitely accepted the label that I was weird and I played into that so that, and it just so that I could give them something that they understand. Because for
mhm,
me to say I have all these sensory issues, it's very long-winded, and and a lot of people wouldn't get it.
mhm.
So instead, I would say that, well, I'm just kind of weird, and I play into that. I wouldn't have to explain myself, but it gave me because labels are good if it can help get you recognized, whether you're labeled for a condition or whatnot. And um, I took the title of kind of a weird guy, but pretty funny, just so I could be accepted and understood, or as far as I could, close to that.
Right. Right. And so does that feel like, does it feel like it's you though? I mean, um,
No, not all the time. And people are happy, people are sad, people are angry. It's like acting, but they're not all that way all the time. And you express many parts of yourselves at different times. And I feel that there's more authentic, there's more than one authentic side of any person,
mhm,
but that I played into the funny, weird guy a bit so that I could lighten the moment.
yeah.
So I could say, "Oh, I don't like friction sounds," because I mean, I'd crack a joke about it, and and I'd be very lighthearted about it because I didn't want to be. I don't like that sound. I didn't want to be, curmudgeon. I thought I was received better doing that,
Yeah.
and but that was my niche as a teenager. And I think I'd have to orient myself differently in the adult world because I have to acclimate. But
Mm.
which is another topic in itself because I've learned to, as I've grown older, I've learned what I like, what I don't like, and how to prepare myself for my day. And I don't have to be so weird that I just kind of got say, "See you later, guys. I don't want to be in the classroom anymore," and I just stand up and walk out. I because I was wearing clothes that I didn't like, and it was occupied 60%, 69% of my thoughts all throughout the day.
Mm.
Like, God, my shirt is literally feels like a sunburn on me. and I hate those sounds. And I can control a certain degree of my life because I'm an adult. I can choose where to go, how long I can stay there. It's like I can get up and leave, and nobody can stop me. And that was a big part of, um, I mean, touching back onto it, my identity was the funny guy, so I could make an excuse to get out of a situation, and no one would bat an eye. But now that I'm able to orient myself in the world, I can just leave
Yeah.
or say no. I don't have to. A lot of the times, justification is a pretty strong word or dangerous word too. But I would try to justify myself. And I realized that that was a very mute point because if they can't understand, I would over explain myself and I just feel kind of stupid.
Yeah.
So I don't have to, and that maybe that being the funny guy was me not wanting to explain myself or over explain myself. And it gave an acceptable reason for them to say, man, Jesse's kind of weird. And then they would leave it at that. Because
Right.
I
Right.
didn't want to get into it, be totally sincere in my explanation, and then still get the same response as if I just raised my hand and said, I'm gonna leave, you know.
Right.
So
Right. So
there's
you,
that.
it's almost, what is the word for that when it's sort of a, um like you're trying to do the non-weird logical thing and
Yeah,
explain it
yeah.
in words. And yet that ends up getting um the response of it doesn't work, where when you just play the part, well then it all kind of makes more sense for
Yeah.
people, I guess.
And that touches back on validation and invalidation, especially from authority figures, teachers, parents, pastors, youth pastors. Um, there's just a lot of people that you're close to, and you trust their opinion and their explanation and their reasoning, and they say, "What's wrong with you?" You know.
Mm. Well, so um what about like do you think the word sensory processing disorder, I mean, is or we've kind of talked for you it's the defensiveness, the tactile defensiveness and just sensory defensiveness in general. But what is that a helpful word, those terms, and you know when you heard them, did it click? Or tell me about like how you came across this whole sensory thing and
I don't remember. There was a lot of buzzwords that was thrown at me because just like most people, I Google it, and well, we know how that goes. It's just not helpful. But
Mhm.
then you start clicking links, and those are not helpful either. And you start to see that there's a lot of ailments or conditions, and they kind of like overlap.
Mhm.
And I would say, I would look at something, go, I don't have that. I do have this. And I end up looking at tactile defensiveness. And I saw they could be classified under fibromyalgia, erythromelalgia, and but it was supposedly a secondary characteristic of a main autoimmune issue. But it again, it's not like when you apply for disability, you don't go for the condition you have, you go for a condition that you could be diagnosed with. And I feel like that's a debacle in itself. But I felt like SPD categorized me in the most accurately because I had sensitivity to light, and I had a sensitivity to certain sounds. I had a sensitivity to clothes and touch. And I thought it was just the best classification to describe how I felt without any other um, ailments or any other conditions. Like
Yeah.
SPD could be, I wouldn't say catered, but it's a very wide range of conditions, and you could have any of them,
Mhm.
and at both extremes.
Right.
And I realized that, oh, some people crave sensory input. Some people don't feel a thing. And I remember when I was younger, I'd really like pressure. I'd crawl in under my mattress, and or I'd actually pick up something heavy and just get on my back and hold it above me. And it's weird how you could be subtly or subconsciously influenced and you have no idea what's going on, but you sort of know that I like doing this. It feels better. Or like I like working out. But I remember um, when I was in Taekwondo, I didn't like the uniforms, but you, I didn't like a lot of stuff. So whatever. But I remember when we'd spar, I'd like it because I like the direct contact. I like the pressure on me.
Mhm.
And even though it hurt, I was kind of smitten by just the sensation of something pressing into me. I like wrestling. It feels like it counters itself. I don't like people touching me, but I like pressure, and it's confusing when
Yeah.
if I were to hear someone else say that and I have no idea, but because I have SPD, I give people the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, okay. Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. I, I believe them. I believe anything anybody tells me because you never know. Like it's best to be polite and just say, um, all right, tell me more. What's that like? And
Yeah.
you find out that most people aren't insane. That they just interpret things differently. Because I would say it also, if you have SPD and you're tactile and defensive, well, you're just going to have a funny wardrobe choice. But if you're not, if you're like on the other end, you're probably going to be a boxer, or MMA fighter, or getting in a lot of trouble because like, I don't feel a thing. And it's interesting how that works because I'd say that there's a lot of people that may be at the top of their game in some sports that just are just on the other end of the extreme. And then here am I stuck in Tommy Bahama shorts. So
So, well, so what is your wardrobe? I mean, I see you have your jacket on uh and a shirt on under, or you're
yeah,
layered up.
yeah. I'll show you. I went to Marshalls and I got some of the I wear athletic undershirts.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I got this one. I forget what it's called, but I got it for $6. I looked it up, $60. Thank God. Jesse strikes a good deal again.
Uh,
And I'm wearing a silk long sleeve shirt. It's a few sizes too big. I think. So you might. I don't have a really big frame. I'm probably about 5'8" and a half, maybe almost 5'9", and I'm about 148 pounds. But I wear clothes that are a little bigger on me because I have more room to move in.
hmm Now, is that what you like about the bagginess, that you can move a little bit better?
Yes.
Or
Um, I don't like tight fitting clothes. I don't like it when it rubs against me. So I feel like when I'm wearing these clothes, I feel like I'm moving within them instead of it confining me.
yeah, yeah.
And that's why I like the jacket because there's a lot of give to it. It's a real, I wouldn't say it's a expensive jacket, but I got it for like $20, I think at Ross. And I said, I like this. I was Christmas shopping, but for a jacket for somebody else, but I'm sure they'll understand. So I got this and I started wearing it around that person. They said, that's a nice jacket. I never said I was going to get it for them, but I was. And then I said to myself, I'm sure they'll
Yeah,
understand. Yeah, I
they
never told them, but I'm sure they'd understand. That's my justification.
yes.
Dangerous word.
I think we understand at least, and if they don't, then oh well.
Yeah, I'm pretty
We'll
much
never know.
past, like, I remember I saw a video and said you shouldn't care what other people think. People's. You shouldn't care what other people think. And there was some guy making a speech, so he had the voice, and he said, "You shouldn't care what other people think. If you find the secret to this, please tell me how." And I'm like, I guess it never goes away. You just gotta accept it,
Yeah.
to a degree.
All right. Well, let me think. What else can I ask you about? Oh, so thinking about the once you found, it's a late, you mentioned labels, and then so once you found sensory SPD, how did that, was that a relief? Was it make you more, you know, did it help clarify anything? Did it make you, usually, I mean, most of the time it's like, oh, I need to know more about this because
Yeah.
it's such that wide range. But do you remember what that was like or how?
It's kind of like I could only equate it with this. By the time I moved into my first apartment, the novelty was off because I was so ready for it. And when I got my diagnosis, I felt relief that I could tell people I had something, but I was always wondering if I could have had something else
Mm,
because there were so many. This is how I honestly felt. And it gave me something tangible that I could deal with, and not just mystery, just a big question mark. Man, why do my socks hurt me? This is stupid. This is really stupid. And you just kind of sit there with your arms crossed going, why do I feel this way?
mm,
And something tangible that I could picture in my mind and say, I guess this is why, you know? And by the time I got my diagnosis, um, it was a relief, but I felt maybe, okay, what now,
right. So kind of maybe one step in the whole journey of, just even, because there's SPD and then there's everybody's manifestation of that and then an experience of that. And then, okay, so then what? And I do feel like there is just a phase of, well, it could be something else too, or there's got to be other things, I do see that happen as well. um
Yeah. And I think, I think back on the diagnosis, thinking about it could being other things, is that I felt like I was living up to that moment. Just, I'm still trying to survive,
mm,
but I felt like I was just trying to survive to find out why. And when I got my diagnosis, then I wondered if it would ever go away. And then I wondered if I was going to live my whole life like this. And I kind of accepted it. And it was just like, what now? And I remember I got the Wilberger brush. I kept calling it the Mark Wahlberg brush because it helped me remember, but I never say it right. And I would say, all right, I got to brush myself, and I would do this in class. You got to understand. It's like, well, they say I got to do it now. It's probably worth it. So I just take it out. And I went to a landscaping school at the time because I like
right.
being outside. And I would just take it out and just go over my body, my legs and my arms. And I just slowly but surely, you just kind of see this. Like everyone turning their heads. And I was still going by the eccentric moniker. And I would say, I think it feels nice. Ignore me. And people wouldn't ask questions because I didn't over explain myself. Like, oh, he's just weird. Okay, yeah. That's all right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, well, I thought I had something I was going to ask along those lines, but
I still got some questions too. Let's see.
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember, what would you want parents of kids who are struggling with SPD to know?
Hmm.
Well, I'd say it's pretty important because you're kind of setting the basis for their whole lives. I'm
Hmm.
not going to understate that. If a child learns to love, he'll love. If a child learns to criticize, he'll criticize. And if you invalidate every single fiber of his being, he'll never feel accepted by the world. And maybe that wasn't me in my entirety, but I could see that if you're telling your kid what reality is like and the reality is different, but you're not listening, your kid is probably going to have a lot of trouble in life because confidence is the gift you give yourself. And it's also given to you by the people that you trust. And it's probably going to be your parents if you trust your parents. And if they're telling you these things, no, you don't feel that way, it's going to be a long road. And I feel that however many years that it took to be invalidated, it's going to take that many years to find out for yourself. And I just consider it a huge unnecessary burden on anybody to feel that way.
Hmm.
So if there's a few ways you could go about it. If a kid is, I don't like the way the shirt feels, you got to distinguish it between normalcy and or how a normal kid feels. Is it this way all the time, or is it just a few select moments? And if it's that way all the time, the kid probably has a condition or maybe a preference, but you got to distinguish it. And I think the defining factor is just parents being aware that should I keep an eye out for this?
Hmm.
Because if it's been proven that if there's intervention when the child is younger, they have less sensory issues as they get older. So I would tell at least just maybe if a kid was has a hard time putting on a shirt or attending certain functions that the parent wants to go to, that you're don't tell the kid you're bad, why are you always bad, then it goes back to you made the parent upset. But that people are more than a bunch of pluses and minuses, they're more complex than that. Like sometimes you can be challenging, but I still love you nevertheless.
Hmm.
And if you open up that bridge of communication, your child will feel comfortable talking with you. And that's all I can say about SPD and parents is that there's just a no one knows what to look out for because they don't know they should be looking out for anything at all.
Hmm. Hmm. So, if there's a parent who's wondering, maybe they're becoming aware, what would you suggest for them?
I would say sit down, or maybe beforehand. Um, if they can brush up on it, maybe read some books. Too loud, too bright, too fast, too tight. I mean that book has Bible font, so it's a long read. Maybe just go on the internet and Google. Just go on the Wikipedia. It's summarization. It's brief. Do that. So that way, because your kid may actually have different symptoms or of SPD than what may be immediately noticeable, or maybe they've already learned to manage it. Like I don't want to play with the Play-Doh, and you got to distinguish between preference or just this is physically painful, and or is it all the time. So I would say sit down, listen, and be prepared to be told things that you may not understand. That how you orient yourself in the world may not be how they do. And they're a kid, but kids are honest. Unless you invalidate them, then they'll learn appeasement and they'll try to keep you happy.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And that's kids for you. And they're already thinking about the parent. So I think the parent should think about the kid.
Yeah.
Listen, that's all we got to say is listen with an open mind, an open heart, and no judgment. Just listen, and maybe they'll feel more comfortable telling you things because it's hard to deal with the issue if there isn't that healthy level of communication, and especially when a parent makes all the decisions when you're yay high anyway. So you
Mhm.
can make it easier on the kid and yourself. You don't have to fight every morning to put on a sweater, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So would the obviously parents have the biggest influence, but just thinking of other people, in our kids' lives, like, a lot of times parents are going to the pediatrician to try to figure these things out. And um, you know, if you would speak, if you remember any pediatrician visits and things like that. But I feel like it's almost, and you tell me if I'm onto something, but I feel like when you try to start putting things into words, it just sounds either it sounds like, oh well, you're just, you're not disciplining your kid the right way, or it's just you're not doing a good job parenting or whatever else,
Yeah,
um, or just it's like, oh well, they'll probably grow out of that, you know. So I mean, do you remember any visits with the pediatrician, or like anything that maybe, did your parents ever seek out any kind of
um,
intervention or?
no, not necessarily. You know, I like it. I like it when you said they'll probably grow out of that, and my mind just went to unless they don't. That's a definite maybe.
That is the perfect response to that. I'm gonna use that. Can I use that?
Yeah,
No.
no, I have no copyright on that. But yeah, I remember I would say to my dad or my mom because mom, I felt terrible because my mom would get me Christmas gifts, and my dad actually had custody of me, and my mom would get me Christmas gifts, and I rarely see her anyway. And I was like, I don't want to try that on. Like I could tell, I could just tell. Like I just don't get clothes from me. Everyone knows, just don't get clothes from me. It ain't happening.
Mhm.
Maybe a hat, maybe. And I remember telling my dad, but I would have to say, unfortunately, my parents were not very understanding. And that brings me to another point that I'll get to. But my dad would take me to the doctor's office, but on the personal side note, um, my dad, I don't think he could really conceptualize the idea that something was wrong with my not the ability for my body to take in sensory input. I don't think he could ever fully understand. And we went to doctors, and I remember speaking to the doctors, and my dad would speak for me sometimes. He's a bit of a politely, I would say, an interjector. Jesse, let me talk, son. And then he'd just say something that was totally not what I was going to say.
Mhm.
My dad has the gift of gab, but
Yeah.
yeah, but I remember we talked to the doctors, and I'd say, I don't like this sound or these kinds of sounds. And, it's not just a specific item of clothing that bothers me, it's universally all things, though some things worse than others. And my dad would say, and when it happens, his hands sweat. And I'd say, yeah, that's true. And and then my dad would say, he needs something for the hand sweating. And I say, no, no, it's not really necessary because that's secondary to, everything else, which I would say is probably more important than clammy hands. And he would say, Jesse, don't interrupt me. Anyway, I was saying, and my dad is like that, and he's one of the most argumentative people I've ever met, and it's unfortunate, but the doctor would say, "Okay, clammy hands." Like, no, no, that's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And my dad would say, "Jesse, don't you worry, kid." And like, Dad, that's not what. And this was in my like mid-teens, and I was just going for. Um, I went under the guise of a wool allergy because of the JROTC uniform that I
Mm.
never missed a day of, and I was again torture. And SPD is not in the DSM. I remember it wasn't in the DSM-5 or anything prior. And all the doctors, they're bringing their experiences to the table, or some of them lack of experience, but um, I would say pure rote memorization of whatever encyclopedia they read. Not trying to denigrate that profession, but then if it wasn't in the DSM, they probably aren't going to believe it because they're paid to have a professional opinion. And if it's outside their bounds of knowledge, they're just going to say no with
Not
their
possible.
bedside.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that. Here's why
Mhm.
you're wrong. Also, it also sets up the next appointment, which is only a few grand too. So don't you worry a bit, you know. And it and if you feel like you I understand some people don't might not have a condition and their doctor is trying to find the right one, but with something as sensory specific, I think SPD should be in the DSM just because there's so many people getting misdiagnosed and then having to undergo all these treatments that definitely are not kind to the checkbook and take all these medications that that aren't helping them anyway.
Mhm.
So I think it should be at least an umbrella category that should be checked and then look more specifically instead of ignored outright and then just dealing with the clammy hands.
Right, right. Looking at more of the root cause rather than the effects. And um,
Yes, exactly.
yeah, because, I think you're right that I think things have changed a bit. It's a much more, I think, especially pediatricians are a little bit more aware, a little bit more recognizing that yeah, this is a real thing. And I think that's because it's how neurology has um, evolved as well, which,
Yeah.
Jean Ayres was the originator of the theory of sensory integration back in, 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And wow, was she way ahead of her time because we're just now kind of
Pretty
catching
much
up.
like 60s and 70s, I imagine that being terrible because polyester, everything, everything. And like those shirts look really stiff and
Hmm.
I'd be I feel like if I was raised in that generation, I just like you just got to wear this school uniform. I'd be like, very interesting. Yeah, and I just get up and you'll never see me ever again.
I could just would disappear.
Yeah, I feel like people with SPD are normally relegated to being the hermits of society.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then some people it's normally some people have autism. And I think those SPD characteristics are more pronounced because autism is normally it comes with a language barrier, or at least you're quote unquote speaking another language per
Hmm.
se, that you see the world differently, not just interpret it differently too. And that SPD can be by itself or with autism. And I just feel that a lot of people, those guys, would have a hard time, especially because, as far as I know, I'm not autistic, but I've never been diagnosed. But to have to not be able to, I would say, read people's emotions as well. They're still they couldn't just. they wouldn't know how to go about telling it anyway, and they wouldn't be able to see if they're being believed or not. And I've always found especially um, bad for anybody that would have to surmount that extra hurdle,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't know how to also receive information too. You want to be able to read people,
Yeah.
and that I was just dropping that because I it passed my mind.
Well, I mean, what kind of brings me to one of the questions I had for you, because you are a very compassionate, very caring person. You're very aware of other people, and very concerned about, very empathetic and concerned about how they're experiencing the world, and you want to understand. And I kind of wonder, is that one of the gifts of SPD, that, you know, being so misunderstood, that will it lead you to try to understand, you know, but I don't know. You tell me, what are there any gifts of SPD that you?
Yeah, I'd say so. I definitely have a history of, oh, that person might need some help, or they're just misunderstood. Because when I see someone that reminds me of me or reminds me how I felt, I tend to step in. And sometimes I remember a lot of people were saying all the right things but doing none of them. So I don't like spectacle or people being like, "Oh, I stepped in to help somebody," and then they take the picture.
Mm,
But what I was trying to get at was that there's a lot of people I think everybody needs a little help. And if you the only thing keeping you from like liking someone or like loving someone is knowing their story. I feel like if you're around most people that you'll like them. Some people don't click though. But that I'm always willing to give someone the benefit of the doubt because I know how I felt. And I remember the people who still were there for me, even though they may not have fully understood, and they listened to me complain, and I'm not sure what they were getting out of it, but they were definitely giving a lot, you know,
mhm.
and I wanted eventually I could be that person for somebody else. And it doesn't always work out, but it's not really about the end result, because if you're thinking about the end result, I think it's just, what would I say? I would say it's very low resolution, like if you want something that's deep, if you want something that's meaningful, it's not about the end result, it's about being true to yourself. And a part of being true to myself was saying no when I felt uncomfortable, and being honest, and stepping in when others needed help, because some things just hurt your soul if you don't. And I realize that some things don't hurt you all at once, it hurts you over time.
Right.
And if you don't say something, it may bug you, and you may lose a little sleep about it. But if you make a habit about it and you yourself know it's wrong, I think that's what really tears people up inside. So I would say that because of that, I know what it's like. I've been there. So if I see an opportunity to be there for someone, at least for a minute, I'll listen. That's all. No judge.
Yeah. So not many people are very good listeners, and you are definitely a good listener and a good connector. And
Well, that's another conversation too. Is that I wasn't always like that. Like,
oh yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not sure if I should even like. It's kind of, oh, notification. It's kind of. I wouldn't say it's like arrogant for me to say, yep, that's how I am. But
Sure. Yeah.
um that I tried, I'm just growing up. That's really it. And I did a lot of talking a lot when I was younger. And it's like, it doesn't mean I was saying anything of substance, but I think I really wanted the world to understand me. So I try to be specific how I talk and to make my point across to get it. Because people are going to misinterpret you, and some people are out there to deliberately misinterpret you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I wanted to, if I were to say something less, I, I, I get in trouble for enough of the stuff that I say, but I, hmm, it's such a deep question. Um, this is actually a case in point. You can see I talk a lot, like my gears are turning, and like I'm just one big open thought bubble.
Mhm.
But I think ah, then my brain starts branching off and like, Jesse, did you know language is probably the ultimate weapon or like the ultimate unifier of people? Because what unites a people? Language. And without language, there can be no understanding.
Mhm.
And but
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I mean, I think you're very you're intentional with your words, and you want them to you know the power of them, and probably as you say you're growing up, which is a good thing because not everybody does. you
some
know
people grow up but never grow up.
yeah. So like just that knowing that words have power, and they have power to heal and help and soothe, or they have power to hurt and harm. And so, it sounds like that's where you discovered the power of words and language. And
That's
so how are you
beautiful.
going to use this?
Yeah, like you summarized it up, and I was so like, like, so that's what I was trying to say is that sometimes I can be a little too wordy.
Oh, we all are. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all, especially when it's coming from the heart, the head and language can't always wrap words around what's in here. And
Yeah.
so that's where I think, the more we connect with each other, we can give each other words, and sometimes there just are no words, um,
So, and I think that is it's not really just what you say, it's coming from a place of understanding. So are I'm an imperfect person. I think everyone thinks it well. I think everyone is, but I think that only makes the stuff I'm good at stand out better. But I have said the wrong thing time and time again. I have hurt people's feelings, and but I'm human, and I think that's just a part of the human experience too.
that's
And
that's exactly what I was gonna say. If I were to finish your sentence, that's what I was gonna say.
everybody,
Connected.
and see that's what for from a certain point of view that if you're remember I was talking about you're angry, you're sad, you're happy, but you're not all those things all the time. But because we've been there, we understand because we know what it's like. We may not know the specific situation that someone went through, but we know the feeling.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
that's how I try to practice empathy because I think if you have a health condition, it could go either way. And like some people become apathetic, they just don't care anymore because you're so focused on survival. And I've seen that happen to people, and it's happened to me to a certain degree where you just don't have the energy, or you're just so beaten up by a world that doesn't understand. And instead of you're so tired of taking it that you kind of want to dish it out. And that's it's healthy to find an outlet for that, but if you don't, I could see people just becoming very again apathetic and bitter.
Mhm.
because you think you deserve better. And I think everybody deserves better, but sometimes life kicks you into the last person that you want to become, and you want to find what is your why? Why do you keep going? And I'm still finding it, and I'm trying to make, I don't know what it is, but this has kind of narrowed out what I can do. But it's like, what now? Because I have friends that have, I told you, have SPD or like a lot of health issues. And I go to all those meetings, and I'm not patting myself on the back because some days I feel terrible and I'm just this big emoji frowny face, or even better yet, the poop one. And it's like, yeah, yeah, some things you can't beat. Yeah, I thought I could beat it, and
Mm.
just like, I'm just going to show it who's boss. But you realize some days you can't. Sometimes you just got to get through it. You can't
Mhm.
beat it. You just got to get through it. And I go to these um, sort of get-togethers, and it's all they ever talk about. And I just stopped going because I didn't want to talk about that all the time. And it's like, oh, Jesse, like, what are you been up to? I've been reading a new book. I'm going to work, and it's kind of sucks sometimes, but whatever. It's like, I don't want to get lost in my head because I've been there.
Mm.
And I remember just, I would go to sleep to avoid the pain. Really, I
Mhm.
got shingles and scabies at the same time once,
Oh,
on top of the SPD.
ouch.
And I just remember I cried for a month straight. And my dad would just come down from his room and say, well, tell me to be quiet. And I was just screaming all the time. And I would just go to sleep. And I remember just time going by. I watched a lot of Jackie Chan movies too. And I was like, I wish I could do that. And so I started working on my health and all that. But I remember being in that position. And what happens if the outside world is so strong that you start to go inside and you kind of forget what's in front of you? And there's a term for it. I think it's called maladaptive thinking. And you start to act out picturesque or like little movies in your head, or what would I say? But you take it to an extreme.
Mm.
And because I was trying to escape so much, I just sit there perfectly still and just come up with scripts and ideas. And I used to play guitar, and I just couldn't anymore. I couldn't slide my hands across because SPD got worse for me when I was in my first year of high school. And well, what now? And when I started turning inside because the world got too much, I started trying to think of other things. And I wanted something to pass the time, but also something I could have meaning in. And I could so type. So I started writing, like, and then because I couldn't play guitar, I started singing a bit. And because I started singing, I was reading books. So I found some books on voice. And because of that, it led to acting. And because of that, it led to voice acting. And I decided this wasn't going to be it for me. I wasn't going to just kind of sit there and be Mr. Poopy emoji. And so, like, you never know what's going to happen, but choose something and try to get good. And I know we were talking about being apathetic and all that, but well, my main point was I didn't want this to define me. I talked to all those people, and I understand some of those people. I want to have their conditions, but that's their personal journey. This is mine.
Mhm.
I can't speak for them. They can't speak for me, and I'm just going to keep moving. And there was something else I wanted to say. It's like, don't let life kick you into the last person you want to become. I know I said that, but when there's nothing else there and you think there is no meaning, make up your own. Give yourself meaning. And I couldn't do any of these things, and I had to reinvent myself because I was the guitar guy, you know, and I had to find something that I could do to express myself, to give myself control over my life because so much was taken away from me. And I won't sugarcoat it. There's a lot of stuff that I can't do, but don't beat yourself up. I'm not a glutton for punishment. And I could say, I'm so good at taking it because you have no choice but to take all of this in all the time.
Mhm.
And then I realized when I gave it back out of anger or just pure A grade unhappiness, it didn't make me feel any better
Mhm.
because I was just practicing being angry. So I didn't want to become apathetic. I started caring about myself. And when you love yourself, it gives you an ability to love other people too. And when you love other people, you want the best for them and you want the best for yourself. And just like Rocky said, that's not how hard you can get hit or it's not doesn't matter if you get knocked down. It's how hard you could get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winners are made.
Yeah.
And I I'm going on my spiel because I do have a lot to talk about, but I have lost at so much. I have sucked at so much. I was a landscaper, and I remember when we were putting they liked me because I had energy, but we had to hold these metal stakes and we were hitting with a hammer. I hated the sound of that. And I was teased a lot too, but I was also more accepted by them than a lot of other people, surprisingly.
Mhm.
I remember my boss said that he owned this huge landscape company. And he said, Jesse, we like you just who you are. And
Mhm.
it stuck with me that someone, like Mr. I'm big and bad. I've already killed 20. Like, I've been to war. I eat my cereal without milk. In fact, it's not even oats, it's nails. And he said that to me. And it's, you will lose at a lot of stuff in your life. And for people with the condition, they have to do twice the work to look half as average. And no one sees it. Everyone just thinks you're lazy or you're complaining too much. And you just got to find it within yourself. God love you to not quit. Find something you could get good at and master that. There's some things that I love to do, but I wouldn't excel at them, but I derive a lot of happiness from them. It wouldn't be guitar. I couldn't be a full-time landscaper forever, but I was a pretty good tour guide. So for anybody that could ever see this, know your strengths, work on your weaknesses, and excuses are only made, or you only move forward when you stop making excuses that you yourself like to make. But you have to take some honesty and know what really hurts you, and know what really builds you up.
Mhm.
Stay strong. Excuse me.
Maybe this is another avenue, motivational coaching and speaking and writing and karate
Yeah. I do what I can.
or jujitsu, whatever. What is that what you
Uh,
did? You did
that was
jujitsu.
Wing Chun. I actually
Oh,
like I started when I had an opportunity, I go to the libraries and I do kung fu with the old people because they said it would help. And I was just I got so I sucked at everything, so I just started saying yes. So I was, doing that. And because they said that would help. Mindfulness.
uh-huh. Yeah.
I always say I'll show up. I said I'll show up.
Well, would you say, are you, I mean, obviously, still surviving, but it seems like you are in a place of thriving in many ways, if not always.
I try, whatever. I try.
So what are the things that help you thrive?
Um, Exercising control. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, but at the same time being mindful of other people and just not no one likes a tyrant, you know. No one likes don't touch me. No, get away. You can't no, don't play that music. You know, no one likes people being just told what to do. And what's helped me thrive is that before I was so overwhelmed because I couldn't choose
Mm,
so much of my life. And now that I'm on my own, I can choose. So I'm at the point where I'm ready to help other people
mm,
or my brothers. I have more time, I have more energy. It's weird considering that when I was a younger person in school, I didn't have the energy, I didn't have the time because everything was so taxing on me. And now I can go to work, I know what to expect. I have a routine that I could totally control. And now I have the time, I have the patience sometimes, and I have the ability to give some of myself away. And I
mm,
feel like I felt like inadvertently self-centered when I was younger because I was always on survival protect mode. But now I got my outfit on, you know, when I have three. I wore jogging pants for a long time.
mm.
And yeah, things are better now than they ever could be before, but it's because I took a risk and got outside of my comfort zone, which is pretty extreme for most people anyway, if you want to know what my normal comfort zone is. But
Now, was that
uh,
your move?
huh?
Was getting out of your comfort zone, was that your move?
Yeah, I had to take a risk, and sometimes uh, you get so wrapped up in feeling a certain way or being a certain way that for things to change, you really couldn't even conceptualize. And for anybody, any kid or anybody that is feeling any kind of sad poo poo time, you know, I was going to say something else, but I realized I couldn't say that. If you're in sad poo poo time, uh, sometimes you can't beat it. You just got to get through it. Sometimes you may not be able to succeed because your environment, maybe you're trying to beat the environment
Mhm.
and maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's taking too much out of you. And you got to know when to boo yourself off stage. I couldn't live with my dad because he he was a little bit of a hoarder, and the floors were always dirty, and he had animals, and he didn't really tend to them. I did, but no, that's just a little past story. But leaving to a place where my dad didn't bring stuff home and then just shove it into my room because I had space and just having to deal with that all the time. I moved out and I got my own place and I have accessorized and there's a mirror there and I have I don't even know what that is. They're random pieces of a dining room cloth hanging from a string, but it looked pretty cool. I got a couch that I bought made out of a material that I like with a pillow I could put on my lap and I could go like this. And everything has been handpicked by me. So
Mhm.
I would say if you want to thrive, you got to know your situation. And sometimes the best thing to do is you dip out.
Mhm.
And I touched base on this is that I moved out of St. Augustine, Florida, where I'm initially from. I moved to Gainesville. And not to touch base on theology and religion, but it always stuck with me that when Jesus he was from, or yeah, he's pretend he's a small town guy. It's like, I'm in my small town, you know, and everyone's like, you can't be the son of God or whatever. And he says, oh, maybe I am. And everyone says, you can't be. We know you. We know you. We know who you are. So he left to a place where no one knew who he was and he could be whatever he wanted because no one was telling him who he ever was,
Mhm,
you know, and he just was able to be who he needed to be.
mhm,
And I always looked at it like that because when I left, there's nobody that I will run into that will, I would say, base me on my past self
mhm.
and bring up everything that happened prior.
Right.
Big picture stuff, but that I'm thriving because I was able to move forward. I wasn't living in the past.
Yeah.
What's going to change? I go through the Rolodex of stuff in my mind all the time. People didn't say the right stuff. What now? People didn't treat you fairly. What now? People often misunderstood you. What now? What are you going to do?
Mhm,
And there's another quote. I read a lot, so I remember all this stuff, kind of, sort of. And it said, "What the bravest move forward, the happiest forget, and I think it's like the the bravest move on, the happiest forget, and the strongest forgive."
mm,
You know, and to anything that happened prior, I forgive. Because what now? And for anybody that would struggle or would watch or hear this on the forgiveness, just like it's just a confidence, it's a gift you give yourself because no one else can do the work for you.
mhm.
And it's like exercise. It's a daily thing. But even if you give up on yourself, some people won't. And even when you feel that there's not much to look forward to, well, we'll make something up. And you'll know it when it feels meaningful. And I told myself that I wasn't going to be the saddest man alive. I didn't want that for myself
Mhm,
because I didn't want for other people. And I know there would always be some people that would be there for me. And I didn't want them having to deal with the saddest man alive all the time. And I said, if I'm going to get through this, I'm going to try not to be the saddest man alive. And it worked out. It worked out okay so far. So
yeah. Well, it's almost like, you made your courageous move from a place where you were valuing and validating yourself and your needs. So you made that step into what you needed to do for you, but then in this thriving, because you've done that, now you can give to other people,
yeah,
which I think especially for you fills you and helps you to flourish and thrive even more. So I think, yeah, we can kind of feel like it's a selfish thing to do what we need, but ultimately it frees us to be able to, you know, live for others you know, and we in turn live even more of our own life and find more meaning in our own life. And
yeah.
so,
And I'm not sure, what's next, but like it's always this too shall pass if it's bad. And I've been bad. I've been bad sometimes. And I always wonder if it's nature versus nurture.
mhm,
Genealogy, my dad doesn't like the feeling of dust. I don't either, but to an extreme degree. And also environment. And both those things together is what creates a person. And I wondered if I've wondered just like who I was, who I would be if I didn't have this.
Mm,
But then I realized how much I would lose if I didn't have it either.
mm, mm,
Because I will I'm not going to say, oh, it's a big part of my identity is being having a condition. But I would say a big part of my identity is who it's made me become in a good way.
yeah.
Because I used to think, oh God, why me? And then I thought, well, why not me? There's a lot of people. It's like, what, you think you're special or something? And and it's like, yeah, I guess I am special like everybody else. And I think that, there's a lot of special people out there, and there's a lot of amazing people out there, and there's a beautiful world outside the front door. And I've been overwhelmed. I've been hurt. I've been sad. I've been Mr. Sad Man. Um, but just to say before, um, there, I remember there was something that said, be a piece of God, whatever you conceive him to be, and in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace within your soul. Because through all its shame, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. And so be cheerful and strive to be happy. And I remember like, man, if I'm sad, I'm kind of realistic and nihilistic about how much the world sucks. But then I realized, well, that kind of makes you kind of suck, doesn't it, Jesse, to be around? And I thought, it's more fun being happy. It's more fun being cheerful because you're not making an excuse to be a sad Mr. Poopy Pants. And I remember being really hyped up and just really angry. I remember being really, really sad. I remember being like manically happy sometimes too, which is okay if it has its moments. But I remember that peace is better than the extremes. And see, this is still my open thought bubble because you're getting all the dialogue that I've ever said to myself. Because this is my thing. Like I know this better than pretty much anything in my whole life. But to have peace within yourself, that's worth its weight in gold. Because that's when you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to fight anybody. You don't have to measure yourself by how you're perceived. And that's all I've ever really wanted. Because, what's more powerful for me to be for someone to snap their fingers, some higher power, and say, you don't have to deal with this condition anymore. Or if I had to choose that and peace with myself, I would choose peace with myself. And I realize that one of those things is totally within my control. So I choose that. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight anybody. And through all its shame, drudgery, and broken dreams, it's still a beautiful world. So be cheerful, you know, strive to be happy. And
Yeah.
I strive to be happy.
Well, it's interesting too that the way we get to experience this beautiful and good world is through our senses and through
Yeah.
our bodies and our minds, and so you know there's that dichotomy again, I guess. Is that the word? Is that the right word? Dichotomy.
I'm not going to argue with you because it sounds nice and it sounds
It
right.
sounds
So,
right, so we'll just go with
yeah,
it.
I will. I'm not arguing with you. It's like I think that is the right word. And we perceive the world through ourselves. And then that opens up a whole thing. It's like you see reality as not as it is, but as you are, as people say.
Right.
And
Yeah.
as you're absolutely right. Let's see what kind of, if you don't mind, I got some of the questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember. There's my cat. I'm not sure you can.
Oh, I can. Yeah, a little tabby cat.
Yeah.
Aw.
It like I have a hard time petting animals, so I just do the I do that. It's encouraging. They don't care. All right, let's see. Um, kind of touched on that. What could employers know that would help them not just retain you as a valuable worker, but help you advance in the company? I'd say we sort of touched base upon that understanding. Not all people are going to do amazing in all areas, especially if you have a condition. And I checked that box that said can work with reasonable accommodation.
Mhm.
And I can work with reasonable accommodation. So put me in front of a group of people, I will sort of be okay. But some, if you put me in an environment inside next under all the lights, I'm not going to be bringing my A game. I'm going to be stuck inside myself trying to survive.
Mhm.
And I'll forget what's in front of me. So I'll just go, you know. So I would say the same thing that I would say to the parents, because the employers are got to be parents too. And if they, well, if they are, they'll know that what a challenge is like.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't imagine taking care of a kid. But yeah, same thing to the parents and to the teachers and to the bosses of society is be open-minded, be understanding. Some things you can't see, and just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real.
Right.
And there's one, the last one you emailed me. It says, "What is the greatest challenge of SPD, and what is the greatest gift?" We've touched base on them a little bit, but I would say the biggest challenge is not SPD itself; it's the stigma.
Mm.
Should you tell an employer it's like having a mental illness, and they'll probably perceive it as a mental illness anyway? Should I tell them? Because the biggest thing to face is if only we had a world of understanding, and you tell them and they'll be like, I understand. So we're peachy, bro. Yeah. Mm, the biggest thing to face is the stigma and the myths. Because nothing's sometimes not knowing things isn't as bad as believing things that aren't true. So if you just assume that someone, I have a sensory processing issue and I don't like fluorescent light bulbs. And they'll be like, we're obviously dealing with someone who is totally insane. They need to be apprehended as soon as possible.
Mhm.
911 is already on the way. And oh, so that's why SPD wouldn't be as bad as or challenging as just being by its lonesome as the challenges that come with the stigma, like
Mm.
anything. If only we could operate on a pure universal world of understanding, but no.
Right.
So it's the myths that continue to persist. It's the believing things that aren't true. It's the inability to understand. It's the recognition that's not happening, and it's the inability to for some people to perceive things outside of their own sensory experiences because maybe they're not informed. So it's not their inability to feel it. It's maybe it really starts at a informative level. And that's why you should talk to the parents, or at least put in a pamphlet, in the doctor's office or the pediatrician office. I think people have already started doing that. That's where it starts, at the community level.
Right. Yeah. I'm just writing something down that you said.
Is it the Mr. Poopy Sad Man?
It's the poop emoji.
It's the poop emoji. Originally that was supposed to be a froyo emoji.
Oh, it was?
That's not poop. That's frozen yogurt. It's just like the clapping emoji. I mean, the prayer emoji is actually a clapping emoji. It's not prayer. It's
Oh,
clapping.
really?
Yeah,
It needs like lines around it or something.
I know, but it's. I mean, I'm sure people still love using the prayer. It does kind of look like poop anyway. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, as I do in my life. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we're gonna have to have some more meetings. Um, just was gonna look and see if there was other things because I think this is really good for a lot of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Me and the rest of the world too. But was there anything else as far as today that you wanted to make sure that you said or shared or
I
um
feel like I've done a lot of talking. And if I had anything more to say, I would surprise myself, but I'll probably think about it on a later date. I
yeah,
know that we never even get to your questionnaire as a occupational therapist, and perhaps that could be the topic of another discussion.
yes, yeah. I think, yeah, that's what I mean. But I knew we wouldn't get to everything today. That's for
Yeah.
that's for sure. But yeah, well, I mean, I think we talked about, doing a podcast and things like that. I don't know if that's something you still want to do or think about, or if that's one of your what's next possibilities.
Yeah. I'm not gonna knock it till I try it, but I feel like a podcast would be something that I'd be on board with. As I'm sure there's people that hopefully would like to listen to my ramblings and to your really eloquent questions and my responses that they're like, I wonder why that's not the question she asked. Why is he answering that? He just asked himself a question that wasn't related. But and then I tie it all back around and like, he really is insane, but nothing to do with the SPD.
Well, but we could do other things too, like you know, you are obviously have the voice of a great host where we could even, interview other people and or have different topics that we discussed or thought about or talked about and or introduced for people and all kinds of things in that regard. So
Yeah, I'd say that I'd like to ask the eloquent questions, and you too, but that I feel that there's a lot of people out there that are just looking for somebody to relate to. And especially during COVID right now, everybody is so isolated.
yeah, yeah,
Not as isolated as before, but we're trying to be safe about this, okay?
right.
And I feel that there's a lot of people that we're falling back on our Netflix, our Amazon Prime, our Disney Plus, and well, we I think are in a really good time where people want to connect with other people, and I'd be happy to facilitate that with you and meet some people who have some stories to tell.
Yeah, yeah. Stories are are the best. The stories and the, like we and you've been saying, knowing there's not just their story, but putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, understanding their experience and their perception, and how they experience the world and experience being human and experience, because we can't know, we will never know what it's like to be in somebody else's body. And
I think about that sometimes because I think when people tell me something I don't immediately get, because I have friends that are different races, different religions, different challenges in their life for different lengths of time. And I try to perceive it from their point of view. And
mhm,
well, that's just, I guess, empathy. You can sort of see it from another one's point of view.
yeah, yeah,
We're more alike than we are different. And everyone's always trying to find a way to say that we're different. But I know that you and I are both human and we've been given a certain life and count your blessings. And there's more working for us than against us.
mhm.
And I'm only 25. And you're only just a couple of years older. And hopefully, hopefully that I have more time on this earth and you never know. So to that, I say yes to everything that sounds interesting because I never know when I'm going to get smited.
Yeah. Well, let's figure out this podcast thing.
All right.
Um, I
Hey, oh, have you seen The Mandalorian?
yes.
1 second.